Hello and welcome back. McFarlane Toys recently released a brand new wave for their modern Super Powers line, which included this very unexpected 3-pack, containing the characters of Peacemaker, Judo Master, and Vigilante. 3 fairly obscure characters in DC canon, a couple of which did not even originate in the DC universe. So let's take a look at these figures and talk a little bit about who these characters actually are. So we have this elongated blister card to hold all 3 figures. We do not get individual pieces of artwork on the front for these characters, just their comic book logos, which are the original comic book logos, along with the Super Powers logo. And as you can see, they do not come with any weapons or accessories. For a couple of these figures, that's a problem, as we'll see. On the back, we do get some artwork for each character, as well as their file cards. Each file card has a small block of text in 3 languages. So let's take a look at those. Peacemaker. When diplomacy isn't enough, Peacemaker loves peace so much, he is willing to fight for it, violently if necessary. Judo Master. Skilled in all forms of judo, jiu-jitsu, and other martial arts, Judo Master is an accomplished hand-to-hand combatant. He is also an above-average boxer and combines both disciplines to good effect. And finally, Vigilante. A master of all forms of unarmed combat, Vigilante is also an expert in the use of firearms and knives. He is in superb physical shape and, combined with his superior skills in the martial arts, is a formidable opponent in almost any situation. Let's get them out of the package. Peacemaker probably has one of the silliest helmets in comic book history. I'm not sure what they were going for with this design. It does kind of look like he's got a toilet seat for a head. You can see the symbol on his uniform, which is also sculpted into the helmet. That is a dove, because he loves peace so much, even though he is willing to kill for it. He has a holster sculpted onto his belt, but as I said, there are no weapons. But there is this open hand, so you can give him weapons from other figures. A gun, a sword, whatever you like. And he does have the standard Super Powers articulation with the head, shoulders, hips, and knee joints. And these joints feel pretty good. I did not have to heat this up. The joints on these McFarlane figures, the Super Powers versions, have been pretty good. Here is Judo Master, and his costume has a rising sun motif. He's got a fist hand for punching, and the open hand for doing his karate chops. And I do like his colorful costume, which is accurate to his original appearance back in the 1960s. And lastly, we have the Vigilante. He has a molded-on knife in a sheath on his belt that is not removable. And unfortunately, McFarlane has decided to give him 2 closed fist hands. So even though the character is an expert in firearms and blade weapons, there is no way you can have him hold a weapon, which is very unfortunate. That's a big miss as far as this figure is concerned. He should have had 2 open hands so you could properly arm him. So let's talk about who these characters are, starting with Peacemaker, whose first appearance was in Charlton Comics Fightin' 5 number 40, November 1966, created by writer Joe Gill and artist Pat Boyette. The Peacemaker is Christopher Smith, a pacifist diplomat so committed to peace that he is willing to use force to advance the cause. Originally, he used an array of special non-lethal weapons and fought against various dictators and warlords. After Charlton Comics went out of business, DC Comics acquired the rights to Charlton's library of superhero characters. DC introduced the characters into their continuity In the 1985 crossover event Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Charlton characters were said to live on Earth 4 before the multiverse was collapsed into just one Earth. The post-crisis version of Peacemaker differs greatly from the old Charlton version, as we learn that Christopher Smith's peace through violence efforts were the result of a serious mental illness. Rather than using nonviolent tactics, Peacemaker became a deadly vigilante. For a time, he served as a U.S. government agent as a member of the Special Forces Unit Checkmate. He also comes into conflict with a character we'll talk about shortly, the Vigilante. Unlike other Charlton characters acquired by DC, like Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, and The Question, the Peacemaker did not receive his own ongoing series. Only a 4-issue limited series in 1988, followed by guest appearances in other comic books. This version of Peacemaker is eventually killed in a battle against the supervillain Eclipso. DC would later introduce a second Peacemaker, named Mitchell Black, who was recruited to be the new Peacemaker via an organization called the Peacemaker Project. This Peacemaker appeared in a comic book limited series called The Law, an acronym that stands for Living Assault Weapons, a series which co-starred many of the other characters that DC acquired from Charlton Comics, including Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, Judo Master, Nightshade, The Question, and Sarge Steel. The Mitchell Black version of Peacemaker is also killed in the crossover event Infinite Crisis, one of several heroes killed in the Battle of Metropolis. The Peacemaker came to new prominence when James Gunn included him in the 2021 film The Suicide Squad, where he was played by wrestler-turned-actor John Cena. This version of the character was then spun off into an 8-episode television series on HBO Max, with John Cena continuing to play the character. The series, produced by James Gunn, had all the earmarks of a James Gunn production: comedy, extreme violence, and quirky music choices. The Peacemaker series holds a 94% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and when it debuted on HBO Max, it was the third most popular streaming series that week, behind The Book of Boba Fett and Cobra Kai. Not bad for an obscure character from the 1960s with a spotty publication history. I personally really enjoyed the Peacemaker series, and I thought John Cena did an excellent job with the character. Side note, in the early 1980s, legendary comic book writer Alan Moore contemplated writing a story that featured an unused line of superheroes that he could revamp and deconstruct. Moore had intended on using the unused Charlton superhero characters, but DC managing editor Dick Giordano, who was receptive to Moore's idea, was opposed to using the Charlton characters. To quote Moore, DC realized their expensive characters would end up either dead or dysfunctional. So in their place, Moore and artist Dave Gibbons created a group of thinly veiled analogs of those Charlton superheroes. Blue Beetle became Night Owl, Captain Atom became Dr. Manhattan, The Question became Rorschach, and Peacemaker became the Comedian, whose murder kickstarts the Watchmen storyline. Judo Master, aka Hadley Rip Jagger, first appeared in Special War Series number 4, November 1965, created by Joe Gill and Frank McLaughlin, published by Charlton Comics. Jagger was a U.S. Army sergeant during World War II. He rescued the daughter of a Pacific Island chief, and in return was taught the martial art of judo. And like many superheroes, he eventually took on a kid sidekick, whose codename was Tiger. When he was folded into DC continuity, Judo Master was said to be a member of the World War II superhero group, the All-Star Squadron. Even though Judo Master started off in World War II, he appeared with the other Charlton heroes in the Law miniseries in 1999. It was explained in this series that Judo Master had lived for some time in the city of Nanda Parbat, where time flows differently. Therefore, Judo Master was able to retain his younger form. Rip Hadley was killed during the Infinite Crisis event, taking part in the same battle for Metropolis where the second Peacemaker was also killed. Hadley's back was broken by famous DC Comics backbreaker Bane. Other characters in the DC Universe have taken on the mantle of Judo Master, including Hadley's son, Thomas Jagger, who later fought and defeated Bane to avenge the death of his father. A different version of the character Judo Master appears in the HBO Max Peacemaker series. This version, portrayed by Nut Lee, is a villain who comes into conflict with John Cena's Peacemaker. DC Comics' original Vigilante was a 1940s themed Western hero who appeared outside of comics in a 1947 film serial and several of DC's more modern animated projects, most notably in the series Justice League Unlimited. The Vigilante we have here is the second version, Adrien Chase, who first appeared as the Vigilante in the New Teen Titans Annual No. 2, August 1983, created by writer Marv Wolfman and artist George Perez. Adrien Chase was a New York City district attorney who often worked with the city's resident superhero team, the Teen Titans, to bring criminals to justice. Chase created the identity of the Vigilante after he survived an attack by a group of mobsters that resulted in the death of his wife and children. Targeted by mobsters, his family was killed. That sounds kind of familiar. I just can't put my finger. Oh well, it's probably just a coincidence. Moving on. After his debut in the New Teen Titans, the Vigilante received his own ongoing series in 1983, which lasted for 50 issues. Despite the similarities between the Vigilante and Marvel's Punisher, Chase was initially shown taking pains to make sure he did not kill his enemies, and would regularly use non-lethal weapons to disable his opponents. Chase became conflicted about his identity as the Vigilante, and tried to give it up, believing he could be more effective and happier by working within the judicial system. But after he gave up the identity of the Vigilante, the mantle was assumed by two of his friends, one of whom was killed by Peacemaker. After resuming the identity of the Vigilante, Chase came into conflict with the Peacemaker, who unmasked him on live television. After this, Chase became increasingly mentally unstable, alternating between bouts of violence, paranoia, and remorse, with his mounting guilt culminating in the taking of his own life. The Adrien Chase version of Vigilante also appears in the Peacemaker television series, portrayed by Freddie Stroma. This version is much removed from his comic book origins. This Adrien Chase is a busboy and self-proclaimed crime fighter who looks up to Peacemaker and displays sociopathic, idiotic, and socially awkward tendencies. For those wondering about the comics I was showing, this Peacemaker and Pals is a reprint of some public domain superhero stories, including from the original Charlton Comics Peacemaker series. And the same for this Judo Master book, also a reprint of public domain material in a slightly different format. And this one is in color, scanned from the original source material. And this is the 5th volume of the New Teen Titans series by Wolfman and Perez, which reprints New Teen Titans Annual No. 2, featuring the first appearance of the Adrien Chase version of the Vigilante. So there you have it, 3 obscure characters entering the Super Powers line. And why were they packed together? Well, I think it's obvious it's because they all appear together in the Peacemaker television series, even though in the series they are far removed from their comic book origins. That's it for this one. Hope you enjoyed learning something about these somewhat obscure characters. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.